Now, you know, I say you can't print food, but that's about as close as you can get. Once you establish a drought-tolerant tree, you don't need to irrigate it or worry about it at all, and then you're printing food.
Yeah, survival gardening, you know, and then yeah, in LA, they had a group of people in a more impoverished neighborhood took over a yard, turned it into this most amazing garden. A lot of news stories on it, magazines, and then the city came in and bulldozed it. But at what point now do we start? Okay, that was 5-8 years ago. Well, what point do we come now where we say, all right, these police are coming in, the army's coming in to destroy the entire 4 or 5 acre garden that all of us, 50 of us or 100 of us worked on for an entire summer, and we have tons and tons and tons of food there that's ready to be harvested, and they want to come in with their dozers and take that away. There's going to be some rule changes here as we move forward to protect food too, because that's exactly what they did in LA. They said, oh, we're going to use this for a facility, and they just went and bulldozed it, and they never came back and did a thing with it. It was just smoke and mirrors to destroy the gardens, because the people were becoming so self-sufficient. They were growing tons and tons of different cabbage and lettuce and zucchinis and squash and all these things that we would need, and they're really healthy for you as well. And you can't kid me that you think about juicing fresh plants and eating fresh vegetables and thing. You're going to need those micronutrients to keep your immune systems healthy. And at some point, it's going to push come to shove over authority trying to take over what you grew. And where does that leave us? That's a whole another set of rules to contend with here moving forward.
That's true. And I certainly never discount the ability of the state to ruin good, productive efforts. I think that's pretty much what they do. And so that's a risk. Yes, that's a risk. It is, after all, a food war. That's why I started talking about food wars going into 2020, although it's become a hot war much more quickly than I would have liked. And yes, so we'll just have to take that risk. And that's why we go back to stressing the nature of the new food system that we're building right now, you and I, is a decentralized one where, we take big hits. Before, they were hits anticipated because of the climate changes that we're experiencing. But now it's fair to say that there will be hits to, nanny state coming in and saying this has to be shut down or whatever it is. I think that's all of this underscores the need to have as many people growing as possible. That's the decentralized model, and it's just more robust that way.
Well, you're talking about the decentralized model. I want to come back to Libya for a second, because Libya's suddenly spotted up and popped up in the news once again. They had the irrigation canals fully functional. They were irrigating the desert out there. And now with the new rainfall patterns that are emerging, that's why there's so many locusts across the Middle East. And you go back in time, you see these areas that are dry desert now were called the Fertile Crescent. The Harappan civilization in Western India, Baghdad, and when you go back in time, taking a look at some of these areas around Mesopotamia, these were milk and honey lands. Today they're dry stones and sand. But now the rainfall's coming back, and the amount of grass growing, they haven't seen this in centuries, the amount of vegetation returning here, at least 1 century, going back, I would say, to early 1910 or 11, so a little more than a century, talking about how much vegetation's come. But even some other accounts are, this is, multi-century event of how much new rain has come above ground. Now, if you could couple that with what is coming from below ground and put out a massive canal system through North Africa with Libya's water sources, see, then we could talk about shifting a grow zone somewhere. And, regions are going to be shifting here. So just because Canada might have food or might not, and we in the United States might have food or not, there's going to be significant losses in every country, and the exports are going to be cutting off. So the more regional you can get and the more local you can get, to try to buffer yourself. And at what point do you overproduce, where then you can start to trade significantly with others? And again, we're going to come back into this time of laws and time of regulations, where if you have too much, now you need to register as a business. You need to get a phytosanitary certificate and have different food and safety storage things, because you have more than a ton of cabbage that you're going to be trading with the next county or the next city over. Our own networks are going to get very large of self-sufficiency and self-production here. We're going to definitely dent into the supermarkets and the whole supply chain and the tax base of buying in supermarkets, which I think it's ridiculous that they charge you tax on food. It's almost criminal that they should do such a thing. But we're going to be rolling into this. So this is a whole nother contention here. As things are shifting greatly on the continental scale, of new grow zones, or even, bringing back down into your own large production, cutting into, and everywhere in between. But again, they're going to try to, throw these ace cards down. You got too many, you need to register. So again, what point do you start to say, no, this is our food and we don't need a certificate to hold on to our own food that we all grew, regardless of the amount of it?
Yeah, I mean, maybe there's a conversation to be had here around trying to align with your sheriff and just saying, look, we need law enforcement to be involved in the food security of our community. And yet there have been conversations around, Second Amendment issues where sheriffs, constitutional sheriffs, will just say we're not going to be able to enforce any of those. If this happens, we won't be enforcing those orders here, and we will in fact protect our people from these things. In fact, there was just a jurisdiction, I forget where, but they did a similar thing with saying like it is a human right to be able to have sovereignty over what goes in your body, and we will not be ever doing mandatory vaccines, and any attempt to impose this on our populace will be looked at as an infringement and an invasion. And so yeah, I think I'm not usually first to suggest political solutions, but perhaps this is why I say that everyone has to be involved, that this is it, that it's go time. And if you're involved in politics, or if you know people that are, or that's just the language you speak, then there's the opportunity for you to get involved and make sure that we are pointing those people in the direction of what's going on and getting them on, like I said, get them on the team, make sure that the sheriffs are on board and getting ready for these things that are coming.
Yeah, again, the shift that's occurring right now, the opportunity, you might even be laughing going, oh, well, you used to be a consultant, you used to, you're running for small town, this or that. But that network of people that are able to organize others into security, delivery, and these types of things. Don't underestimate that, and how willing people are to maybe bend now, because before they had to kowtow specifically. And I was going to laugh and say, well, Christian, you're not welcome in the New World Order because you care about people. And again, a lot of these people were trying to climb career ladders because they had to, but once they start to realize that the career ladder has just suddenly ended at the last rung, there's no more to go, because there's the entire way offices are going to be structured and back to work and working from home. The entire landscape of business is, you just seen the change beginning. We're at the beginning of the change here. So a lot of these people might not behave like they used to just because you know a person or think they were like that before. It's because there was an agenda behind their actions to try to move forward in our world. But since our world has definitely shifted, now perhaps these people might think differently, and instead of having to agree with everything, they're going to go off and finally get some of their own opinions. So with the political end, please don't make the mistake of thinking all politicians are slimy and don't want to include them, and that they're not part of the solution. They're all scoundrels and things. And we could do that with a lot of different segments through the society and job occupations, right? What I'm trying to say is don't just judge the book by its previous cover, because everything is so changed right now that people can morph into butterflies in seconds in the way people perceive reality. And before, maybe they were a little selfish, but now suddenly they want to share and help and do because they realize the gravity of the situation. Like where we are now is definitely shifting minds and awareness of truly the control structure on the planet, including the economy and the way the political system was set up and how facade-ish it was. And then just in daily life, like maybe they realize that they're much more content to being outside and doing other things than stuck in an office. Like people have changed so quickly during this time. It's fascinating how fast everybody is just kind of becoming themselves, and just they have all the free time to do what they really want. And just this gigantic emergence of people following sort of passion or just dumping what really made them unhappy in terms of office and work. So look for the change. That's what I'm saying. Just completely be open to everything out there right now in this time of change.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what I mean when I say the rules that used to apply are no longer entirely there. And you're exactly. I like the way you said it. That people are morphing into butterflies really rapidly like that. I like to think of it that way. But you're right. They were optimizing their lives before for certain things. They perceived that dollars had value, and now we see that we're just bailing out everybody, printing as many dollars. So it's people are getting it. That things are breaking down, and so they can actually go do things that they want to do. Go do things that feel good to do. And one of the things that is best in terms of keeping this in mind and remembering this to keep the faith and to get hope from it is that just stepping back and looking at the situation and noticing that these people that are trying to control everything have terminator seeds that don't reproduce. They have GMO that's toxic. They have fake news that's full of lies. I mean, they are everything that is about death and lies, and we are fighting that from the side of life, and we are working with nature to grow food, and we're basically doing God's work on this planet right now. We're holding the truth and trying to grow good nutritive food, working with nature. And so of course we're going to win. That's just the way it's got to be. We must win against the forces of evil and darkness. I just think it's a nice framing.
Well, I think that's already baked into the cycles anyway. I mean, what we talk about with this grand solar minimum cycle on the 400-year period, there's also the Vedic traditions on their wheel as well that are going around 12,500 year intervals as we come out of this Kali Yuga into the Dwapara Yuga or Dwapara. And it's all about the evolution. And they actually talk about the sun changing a phase state where there's just the energy radiance coming out of it in terms of vibration frequency is something different that affects the entire solar system and everything existing and even outside that, connecting to other solar systems at this time. And it's in a cycle. And what we're seeing right now, I think, is the vestiges of the last of the darkness, the ancient evil, as Craig called it, to still try to hold state in this vibration frequency. Because we're talking about a state change, because you're noticing it in a lot of people around here too. Things are manifesting faster. People connecting together just seems to be quirky, that it just happens much faster now. In this time of duress, it seems like networks are becoming more cohesive, faster, and people are finding each other. It's almost like electric molecules or atoms being drawn to each other. And as we look at this pyramidal top-down structure in the facade of the Bank for International Settlements and International Monetary Fund, and then the Fed here, it seems that it's all there. They can't hold state, so they're doing anything they can to grab you and try to pull you back down. But the cycles and change in vibration, higher and lower, it's baked in already. So we are going upward every single day. And you can see the struggle. You can really see the division now where the darkness lies within all this one segment of population that wants to control everybody. It's so visible now. And I think that's part of the reason people are waking up and really wanting to take a different look at how their lives have been structured, and possibility to take sovereignty and grow food and have their own fresh water and collect their rainwater for once without being arrested in some states, Can't even collect your rainwater without being arrested. That's crazy. So there's really a division now. It's very opaque, and it's starting to separate like oil and water, where you see the darkness over there and you see more vibrational light on this side. Vast changes coming through. So how many cycles within the cycle do you think we are? Because I think we're in a more heavy or powerful cycle on this time, riding inside this 11 and 400 year duration, but don't know what you think.
I think it is truly an exceptional time. And I agree that they seem to be grasping as best they can. And I like to think that humanity, that we are a species that when you try and do that we wriggle free, right? We just sort of respond by getting even more difficult to grasp. And you see, one discouraging thing that I heard was somebody who, I guess you would say this person is not quite as aware as I would like them to be. And, a couple of weeks ago they were saying, there's never going to be, this ID, they're never going to inject. That's ridiculous, right? They were still on the that's ridiculous side of things. And then mere days later, they were saying, it's just like the TSA after 9/11, man. We'll just adapt and we'll get over it. And for one thing, that was just, I just have to observe that was a really scary shift to such an extreme thing. We all have to be digitally ID'd, and it's just accept it, But I think that's the risk here, is that we have been gradually, incrementally pushed towards this totalitarian system for a while now, and people have gotten used to the creeping totalitarianism, and they've gotten used to adapting to it. And I think what's going on now is a fatal dose of it. I think that we can't accept this latest rounds of changes. We have to push back. We can't allow them to completely control the food system and have IDs and all of us walking around. It's just the current round of things that they're trying to push through, and that they're going to use the coming food shortages to really ramp up the pain and try and make the case for their agenda, is not something that we can allow. It's just not.
Check out Emirates Airlines. You're going to be baffled. You're going to be shocked. You're going to fall off your chair over, and you're going to be like, no way, because it dovetails right into what you said, Christian. Emirates Airlines, if you're going to fly from in the Middle East, and they were flying specifically Tunisia, I think they were going from Abu Dhabi or Dubai to Tunisia. They had a couple different routes they were doing this. Before you were able to board the aircraft, they had 6 seats and they had to prick your finger, and then they took blood before you were able to get on the aircraft, 6 people at a time. So now they were telling their citizens, well, you got to go to the airport like 4 hours, 5 hours early now, because you're going to have to get a blood test before you can get on the plane to be able to go to Middle East. It wasn't, Dubai over to London or Dubai over to Sydney. It was Dubai to Tunisia, within the same continental region there. So if they're already at the point where they're taking blood in the airport before you can get in, and they did it at the boarding gate because everybody's sitting around there, so they just came around, all right, your turn, your turn, your turn. How many people are going to say no? Before you say, no, I'm not going to give you my blood so I can get on the airplane. You're smoking something at that point. And how well trained are the people, and where's your DNA going to go? There's a million other things with it. But just the principal point is, you need to give blood before you can get on an airplane. I mean, we've already jumped the shark on that one.
Yeah, it's out of control. And you saw the media at the beginning even of this virus craze starting to say people that shouldn't even be allowed to fly. So, I mean, you're right. We're going to experience a ramping up of this kind of stuff. And they're going to make the case that we all need to be, we were just saying that we'll all need to be ID'd and show our tattoo like an idiocracy. But, and then seeds, the food is the weapon that's going to make that go through. And I just want to point out, like Bill Gates, who's up there pushing a lot of this stuff through, and plenty of people are already talking about him. But one thing that's not being mentioned as much is that he was a heavy financer of the Svalbard seed vault. He's very involved in collecting and protecting seed genetics. And so as they're doing that privately, but then outlawing seed sales, like it's clear what's going on there. Like that's true wealth, and we need to start accumulating seeds. Those genetics are what can feed us and our families going forward in the future. And then growing them out, making more and more of them, proving them out in our local environments, sharing those results with our communities. When you see them spending tens of millions of dollars to build this seed vault, and trying to deprive you of seeds, if you didn't already value them, now it should be pretty clear that that's a valuable thing, that's true wealth.
Yeah, shout out to Southwest Utah, creating a food forest in the desert, because Craig lives down that way, and I know a fair handful of people that are living down in the Four Corners area that are saying that it's becoming incredibly wet and there's so much more vegetation growing that here's just an idea for you. Personal, firsthand, this is what they're doing. They're going around and finding the edible plants, and there seem to be a fair few types. Even they have a bean that grows off that can be made flour, and I forget the name of it. And there's an enormous amount of desert plants that are growing. So what they're doing is they're finding where the plants are outside their homes and outside their neighborhoods, out in the wild, or again, just around where they're living. And what they're doing is then cutting away the other brush, or creating an environment for that food plant to then expand in its natural environment. Because if it's growing there, that seed rolled and it chose to put roots and it lives there really well. So it's already chose the best, most perfect location for it to thrive and exist in nature anyway. That's why the plant's there. That's the sweet spot, literally, for that plant to be growing. So just think about creating an area, or knocking away some other vegetation that's around there so things can expand. Now, I know cactus grow pretty slow, and different varieties of acacia grow pretty slow, but there's other faster growing plants that are out there that also provide berries that can be crushed into wheat, or different fruits and that sort of thing. I wouldn't say leafy, but a much harder vegetable. You have to boil for 20 minutes to eat it. But there's other things out there. And if you clear that, you can do the same thing in a regular forest around your house if you're more in the northern parts of the US. But all the way from deserts in Utah, clear up to the open plains, and all the way up into the forests of Maine, you can do the same thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And a food forest is it's not something that's just, here's the way you do it, go execute on this plan. It's like, what's working for you in your area? What have other people done in similar zones, given your precipitation patterns? You want to go out there and put some perennial nitrogen fixers in there. I was just looking at some Siberian Pea right now, because those are your powerhouses. They come in and they just, year after year, that's all they do, is they exist to draw down nitrogen and to feed everything around them. And so you put those guys in there, and then whether you're doing annuals or whatever else, fruit trees all around them to benefit from those nitrogen fixing plants. It's awesome. You build these systems that, taking a little bit of invested labor at first, but over time they pay off so much more. And those are the systems we need to be standing up right now, because we got to be doing it's like we've been saying all along. You got to be doing that work up front to get those results later.
And I might toss out there goji berries, which are the red ones that you see frequently in the store that are dehydrated. Those grow really well into just incredible bushy bushes that you get huge yields off of. But the berries are small. It takes a little time to harvest. But again, it's a never-ending plant. Once you put it in the ground, it keeps going. And also gooseberries, which when they grow, they come to a yellow round berry. And they're really full of seeds, but they're quite delicious. I've been dehydrating a few of those. Just one berry is enough to put out. You got to start them in a tray. I do. And then both of the goji, because there's a lot of seeds in a goji berry. So be careful not to put them all in one thing, because you got 8 to 10 seedlings coming out of one little thing, and they're hard to split apart without breaking them and causing damage. But same with the gooseberries. There's an enormous amount of seeds in just one of the, you only need literally one berry to just put it out, and you grow dozens of plants from that one. But these are super nutrient foods that I would think would be quite helpful to have around. They grow faster. Again, even if they die over winter, what it appears they're still alive underground, they'll pop back up the next spring come time.
And just to drive that home, go get some goji berries. Go get an organic spaghetti squash. Go get some of the organic potatoes, because the inorganic ones have been sprayed with stuff that keeps them from growing eyes. And then do it. Get the seeds out of the berries. Start more than you can take, and then over the next however many months, because the nurseries have shut down in a lot of cases, there's no other way for people to get to these things anymore. So if you want your community to have access to these kinds of foods, it's up to us. It's up to those of us who are aware, who see what's going on, to start those seeds now, and be able to equip our community to deal with what's happening as they figure it out. But gooseberries, those things are sharp. You got to watch out. Those are like I'm talking about the permaculture security perimeter. There, they serve multiple functions. You can get those with the blackberries. It's a good deal.
Couldn't remember what I was going to say. Forget it. I lost my chance.
The sharp gooseberries are always a derailer.
Yeah, it was something prior to that, but all right. I'll think about it. It'll come back to me like, oh, that's what it was.
Yeah, so I mean, go get those squash, the organic butternut squash, organic spaghetti squash. These are good ones to just scoop those seeds out, dry them out, and then you've got an army. And you can save those. Obviously, you can save those seeds, and you've got something. They're not going to grow as well as they will next year, right? Once you grow them in your own environment, and they sort of learn where you are and how much you water them. I'll say more on the food forest, because I've been working hard on, like, a lot of trees. You'll need to irrigate, and irrigation takes power. Water is pretty expensive as a resource for me here. I'm not in a place where it just rains all year long in California. So when I look at the food forest design that I'm working on, it's involving a lot of trees that are drought tolerant. So I've got irrigation now, because they're all very, they're still getting established. But the goal is, like, look, in 2-3 years down the line, I can pull the irrigation. I can even pull the fencing down, and those trees will just continue, just like figs, persimmons, pomegranates, olives. These are trees that once they get over that initial establishing phase, that's it. They just, I say you can't print food, but that's about as close as you can get. Once you establish a drought tolerant tree, you don't need to irrigate it or worry about it at all. If you give it some horse manure a couple times a year, that would probably be exactly what it wants. And then you're printing food.
Yeah, and that was the point I was trying to bring up there is, you go into the garden centers that you were talking about. When you're going to buy a tomato plant that's ready to put in the ground, those are $7. I mean, how long would it take before you need 10 plants? That's almost $100 after tax, and I only put 10 plants in, where you could grow those from seed. And, just the movement of these garden centers. And, how about a fruit map or a food map of your neighborhood? Because I would have mapped out your house and said, hey, there's this house over there that has a whole bunch of fruit trees in it. And I would have put you on a map and said there's fruit at this place. And then in Taipei, or outside of it, where I was living over in Taiwan before I came back to the US here, we had a whole map of, like, all these community gardens all over, a couple square miles. There must have been 25 community gardens there, with areas where water catchment was, where there were a couple basins that when it rained, they would fill up as a lake, and then it would slowly drain down if there was. And so anywhere there was food or water, just made a map about it. And before long, you have a full map and you know exactly where everything is around. But yeah, your house would have for sure been marked as a fruit zone. So just think about that. If you're going to go around the neighborhood, how much have you really paid attention to what trees, what type of vegetation is growing in your local neighborhood? I know a lot of it is ornamentals, but have you really taken a look at people's plants as you're walking around? Have you really started to notice after the flowering, is that just a beautiful flower that's coming out for spring, or is that going to actually turn into a fruit? And what type of trees do you know, like the identification of different species? So if you walk by it, even before it bears fruit, that you still know that that could be a tree, like a fig. You know, they have a specific leaf on that, very easy to spot. How about a local map of the distributors, the wholesalers, the farmers markets, and the actual farms that are around your area too? Anything to do with food? How about the rail destinations where large amounts of cargo come in, specifically, you know, break bark on wheat coming across on a train? So, you know, you could take it large or small. Again, you could do that continentally down to local, or, you know, from the train depot all the way just to, you know, there's a couple of plants, a couple of papaya trees down in that tree line over there.
Yeah, and expanding on that, any resource, right? So if you're driving down your neighborhood and you see somebody's got horses, then like I said, there's a great source for, I think, plenty of it, of horse manure for your fruit trees. And somebody next door has alpacas. You've got some alpaca wool, and everybody's hurting right now in their own ways. And so it's you get a different, like Dave was saying, you get a different answer now if you ask, hey, can I come take some of your horse crap, or can I help you with this, or can we trade this or that? It's just to really underscore the financial aspect and the economic impact of what's going on right now, because there's so much changing so rapidly that it is almost impossible to really crystallize all of it simultaneously into like a new. And like I said, it's every day you're still looking for that solid ground to stand on. And part of those things that have changed is just how severely our economic situation has been damaged right now. And what that means is that people are looking for new opportunity. There are new opportunities. People are doing things they wouldn't have done before. They're exploring options they weren't thinking about before. And they're making transitions into growing food and doing things that they didn't have time for before. So it's just try things. I think that's a great thing, is do experiments in your garden, but also socially. Who can I work with in my neighborhood here to build that map of horse manure and fruit trees and all of these resources that we can really capitalize on as a community together. Always, you got to start, of course, with your family and trying to make sure you're secure there. But it's not enough, folks. You can't just stock up and beans, band-aids, and bullets your way through this. It's going to take the people around you working with you. And so that's a conversation you have to start now.
And I made the mistake too. You know, I've grown chard a lot, but this time I put black plastic on it because they were expecting a freeze. I forgot to take it off. I got around noon, and then the plastic had heated so much from the UV, and it just completely fried everything that the plastic was covering. I got to start over and replant again. That's the first time it's happened to me. You usually use clear plastic, had black plastic, didn't think anything of it. And that's a major mistake, because if that would have been the crop for the year, that would be something and a mistake that would put you in danger. So make the mistakes now while you still got a little time to more replant. At least for the rest of the year, you can probably replant twice depending on your zone. And also, Christian, quick question about dehydrators. You know, food dehydrators, they're quite expensive. Some of them 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 5,000. You can even take it to 10 grand for a food dehydrator or freeze dryer, and you know, these mechanical systems to keep our foods and preserve them for a longer period of time. What are you thinking in ways that people can store food with either dehydration or freeze drying that won't break the bank?
Yeah, so the good news is that people for thousands of years have practiced many different ways of preserving their food. There's a couple, even if you go to archive.org and look for preservation and preserving food, you can find texts from hundreds of years ago that describe all sorts of ways. And it's good news. The more you look into this, the more comforted you are. There have been tins of lard that have been, like 60 years old, that weren't frozen. Like, all the things you read about lard going bad if you don't have it in the freezer after a year. They found this tin of lard from like World War II, and they open it up and it's fine. So when you combine like the fact that flour doesn't store well, but grains do, you can just put some hard red wheat, especially, stores pretty well if you keep it dry and put oxygen absorbers in there. So that's great. That means we have lard, which is pretty stable. We've got wheat that's pretty stable. We can combine those to make tortillas, or any number of things. And it sounds weird to say this, but actually cooking is one of the skills that I think is most important for us right now, because that is how you translate these raw ingredients into good nutritive food that you want to eat, right? If it doesn't taste good, we've already got a problem there. But I don't think anybody wants to look at like 5 years of just gruel and oatmeal and stuff like that. So so figuring out how to take stored food and translating that into how to work with it. These are things actually we should already be practicing. Cooking with your own preps is something I've talked about before on my own channel. But yeah, having that understanding of like, these are the raw things that I'm able to store. This is what I'm able to grow. This is what I can trade for. Collectively, I can render these into a pretty diverse, good tasting diet. Even my kids will eat it, right? It's the more you flex that muscle, I think the easier this whole thing gets and the more approachable the problem becomes.